Okay, so today we're going to be learning how to solve multi-step inequalities. Again, solving inequalities is very similar to solving equations. We just have to remember a few extra things. All right, so let's jump into here. Okay. First, one thing that we need to remember is what type of circle do we use for which type of symbol. First of all, if we ever have an open circle of some type, so what that looks like is one of those guys. If it's not a solid circle, I know we do not want the solid line under our inequality, which means we do not want the or equal. So it either has to be a greater than or a less than sign. It can't have the or equal underneath. So if we have a closed circle, that means it's filled in. Remember, that's a solid circle, so we need the solid line under our sign. So we need the or equal. So that's whenever it's a greater than or equal or a less than or equal. So remember, no solid line, no solid circle. Solid line, solid circle. Okay, so this is that very important extra rule that we have to remember whenever we are dealing with inequalities. Remember, there's sometimes that we have to flip our sign. And we need to flip our signs when we either multiply or divide both sides by a negative number. So other than that, it's pretty much the same as solving equations. So let's jump into an example. I know this is an inequality because it has an inequality symbol. It's not an equation, but I'm going to draw my line under the inequality symbol. I see parentheses, so that's the first thing I need to take care of. That -8 that's out front, so I'm going to have to distribute it. Remember, distribute is multiply. So I'm going to take -8 and multiply it by x. That's going to give me -8x. Then I'm going to take that -8 and I'm going to multiply it by that -1. -8 times -1 is a +8, so I'm going to write that as +8. Okay, and I can't forget about this minus x. It's not inside the parentheses, so I'm not going to distribute to it. It's just going to drop down. Okay, so some people get confused right here. Yes, we did multiply by a -8, but did we do that to both sides? No, I only did it to this one side. So remember, if you're going to flip the sign, you have to multiply or divide both sides by a negative. We did not do that, so we leave the sign alone. And on the right-hand side, that -28 drops down. Okay, then we need to look for like terms, see if we can combine any. So I see x is here and here. So let's go ahead and add those together. That's a -8 and that is a -1. So if you want to put your 1 there, do so. Combine means to add. So -8 plus -1 is -9. So I have -9x's. And then I look for my constants, my regular numbers. And I see a +8, and that's all I see. So I don't have anything to add to it, so it just drops. Okay, we have done nothing to change our sign, so it drops down exactly the same. And that -28 on the other side drops as well. Okay, if I want x by itself, I look on the side that has the x. I see two numbers, this -9 and the 8. Those are the two numbers we need to get rid of. The first thing I need to get rid of is this +8. So the opposite of a +8 is a -8. What we do on one side, we remember to do on the other. +8 and a -8 cancel, so that -9x drops down. All we did was subtract 8 from both sides, so that is not a reason to flip. And on the right side, we have -28 minus 8. -28 minus 8 is a -36. All right. So if we want x by itself, I need to get rid of this negative 9. Well, when it's touching, that means multiply. So really this says negative 9 times x. So the opposite of times is to divide. So we divide by the coefficient. That's the number out front. So I'm going to divide by that negative 9. What I do on one side, I remember to do to the other. My negative 9 on top cancels the 1 on bottom, so x drops down. Okay, so let's think about what we just did. We divided both sides by a negative 9. All right, so that is a reason to flip the sign. So instead of saying less than or equal to, I know it's going to say greater than or equal to. On the right side, negative 36 divided by negative 9 is a positive 4. All right, so I know my answer is x is greater than or equal to 4. Okay, so let's talk about, can 4 be a solution? Well, yes, it can, because it has the or equal to. So 4 is included. So 4 is included in any number that is also greater than 4. Okay, so since it has the or equal sign underneath, solid line, solid circle. So we're going to go to 4 and put a solid circle. Okay, now I have to decide whether I put an arrow to the left or to the right. Well, this says greater than. Greater is more than, which is to the right. So as you go to the right, the numbers get greater, they get bigger. Also, notice how this looks like an arrow pointing to the right. Remember, that only happens when it's written properly, whenever x is out front. All right, moving on to number 2. I draw my line where I see the inequality. And I see parentheses, which means I'm going to distribute, which means multiply. So I'm going to take this negative 3 and multiply it by x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Next, I take that negative 3 and I multiply it by 2. Negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6, so I write that as minus 6. And notice this minus 3x is not inside the parentheses, so all I'm going to do is drop it down. Yes, we did multiply by a negative, but it was only on one side. It did not happen on both sides, so there is no reason to flip our sign. The right-hand side is just going to drop. Okay, now that we handled our parentheses, we're going to see if there's anything we can combine. So I see x is here, I see x is here, and my constant. So we're going to add those up. I see for my x's a negative 3 and another negative 3. So we add negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. So we have negative 6x's. For our constant right here, this is all we see, is this minus 6. So there's nothing to add to it, so it just drops down. All we did was combine our like terms, so there is no reason to mess with our sign. We cannot combine over on the right-hand side because this has a variable, this does not. So they are not like terms, so that side just drops. Okay, so now that we handled our parentheses and we combined our like terms, the next thing is we want to make sure we have all of our variables on one side. And right now, it's not. We have negative 6x's on one side, we have 2x's on the other. It does not matter which set you decide to get rid of. I'm going to get rid of this negative 6x because the opposite of a negative is a positive, and I like to add, but either one would work. So I'm going to add 6x. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other. Make sure you keep your x's lined up. So a negative 6x and a plus 6x cancel. So this negative 6 right here will drop down. We have done nothing to flip our sign, so leave it alone. On the right side we had 2x's. We add 6x's, so together we have 8x's. And that plus 18 will drop. Okay, so we're still trying to get x by itself. Since 8 is directly touching it, let's leave this guy alone for now. And we're going to get rid of that plus 18. To get rid of a plus 18, we subtract 18. What we do on one side, we do on the other. So we have a negative 6 minus 18. Negative 6 minus 18 is going to give me a negative 24. My sign drops down. There's no reason to flip it. A plus 18 and a negative 18 cancels, so that 8x drops down. All right, so the last thing we need to get rid of is this 8. Remember, when they touch, that means 8 times x. So the opposite of times is to divide. And divide by that coefficient. What I do on one side, I do on the other. Negative 24 divided by 8 is a negative 3. There is no reason, and I think this is where a lot of students mess up. They see that this is a negative 24 right here, so they think they need to flip the sign. Did we divide by a negative number? No, we divided by a positive 8, so there's no reason to flip our sign. The 8 on top cancels the 8 on bottom, and the x drops down. All right, cool, that is our answer, but it is written improperly. Remember, the x is on the wrong side. So if I want to write it properly, I need to switch the x and the negative 3. But if I'm going to flip-flop what's on each side, I also need to flip-flop that sign. So instead of being an less than, notice it looks kind of like an L, it's going to flip and be a greater than. All right, so that is the answer. Let's put that on the number line. First of all, we have to decide open or closed circle. Well, there is not an or equals line underneath. So no solid line, no solid circle. So I'm going to go to negative 3 and put an open circle. Next, we have to decide to the left or to the right. Well, this is a greater than symbol, so greater than goes to the right. On this case, let's talk about, will negative 3 be a solution? And the answer is no, because it does not have the or equal. So negative 3 is not greater than negative 3. If I wanted negative 3 to be a solution, it would have to have the or equal bar underneath. So I know all my solutions are any value that is greater than negative 3. So any of these numbers as you get bigger. Good. On number 3, I do not see any parentheses, so that's cool. Now let's see if we can combine like terms. So let's look on the left. This has a variable, this does not. So we can't combine these. These are not alike. Let's try the right side. This has a variable, this does not, so I can't combine these. All right, so we don't have to worry about that either. So moving on, now I worry about, do we have all x's on the same side? Which we don't. We have 4 x's on one side, we have 6 x's on the other. Remember, it does not matter which side you choose to get rid of. So that's up to you. Okay, let's try to get rid of these 6 x's. Okay, well, how would I get rid of these 6 x's? Well, look in front of it. Those are a positive 6 x's. So how do we get rid of something that's positive? We do the opposite. We're going to take away 6 x's. So I'm going to subtract 6 x's from this side. And what I do on one side, I do on the other. Keep your variables lined up. There we go. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we had 4 x's. We subtracted 6 x's. 4 minus 6 is a negative 2. So that's going to give me negative 2 x's. And this minus 6 right here will just drop down. We have not done anything to flip our sign, so leave it alone. Our positive 6 x's and our minus 6 x's cancel, so this negative 20 here will drop down. All right, so we're trying to get x by itself, which means I have to get rid of this negative 2 and I have to get rid of this minus 6. Well, this is the first thing I want to get rid of. So to get rid of a minus 6, I do the opposite. I'm going to add 6. What I do on one side, I do on the other. A minus 6 and a plus 6 cancel, so that negative 2x drops down. We have done nothing to flip our sign. On the right side, we had a negative 20 plus 6. Negative 20 plus 6 is a negative 14. All right, the only thing we have left to get rid of is this negative 2. Remember, when it's touching your variable, that means multiply. So this says negative 2 times x. Well, the opposite of multiply is divide. And we're going to divide by the coefficient, which is the number out front. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. What I do on one side, I remember to do the other. My negative 2 on top cancels the negative 2 on bottom, so x falls down. Okay, let's talk about what we just did. We divided both sides by negative 2. So we divided both sides by a negative number. That is a reason to flip the sign. And then finally, negative 14 divided by a negative 2 is a positive 7. So that is my final answer. So we know the solutions, any number for x has to be less than or equal to 7. All right, so let's decide open or closed circle. Well, it has the or equal, solid line, solid circle. So at 7, I'm going to go make a solid circle. Okay, this symbol right here looks like a squished L. L is less than to the left. Also notice it kind of looks like an arrow pointing to the left as well. All right, let's keep it rocking. Number 4. Okay. On number 4, I'm gonna draw my line first. Oops. Okay, and I see parentheses, which means we're going to distribute that 2. So 2 times x is 2x. Then I'm going to take that 2 and multiply it by -3. 2 times -3 is a -6, so minus 6. This is plus 5x, which is not in the parentheses, so it's just going to drop down. All right, my sign drops down, and the right-hand stuff will drop down. Okay, next we see if there's anything we can combine. So on the left-hand side, I see x's here, I see x's here, and I see a constant. So let's add those together. For the x's, I see a 2 and a 5. So let's add 2 plus 5 is 7. So we have 7 x's. When we look at our constants, our regular numbers, so this is all I see, so there's nothing to add to this, so that -6 will just drop down. My sign drops down, there's no reason to mess with it. Let's see if we can combine on the right-hand side. Well, this one has a variable, this one does not, so I can't combine these because they're not alike, so that side will just drop down. All right, so now that we handled the parentheses and we combined where we could, now we have to make sure we have all variables on the same side. Okay, it does not matter which side you get rid of, so this time I'm going to choose these 7x's to get rid of. Okay, so to get rid of it, I look in front of it. Well, that's a positive 7x. So to get rid of it, I need to do the opposite and take away 7x's. What I do on one side, I do on the other. Keep x's lined up under x's. My plus 7x and my minus 7x cancels, so this -6 will fall down. We have done nothing to mess with our sign. On the right side, we had 9x's and we're taking away 7. Well, 9 minus 7 is 2, so that's going to leave us 2x's. And that minus 14 will drop. Okay, so if I want x by itself, I need to get rid of this 2 and I need to get rid of this minus 14. We need to get rid of the minus 14 first, so we do the opposite. We're going to add 14. Remember what we do on one side, we have to do on the other. Okay, so I have a -6 plus 14. So that's going to -6 plus 14 is 8. We still have not done anything to flip our sign. On the other side, a -14 and a plus 14 cancel. And that 2x drops down. All right, the only thing we have left to get rid of is this 2, and notice that they are touching. Remember, that means multiply. So the opposite of multiply is divide, and I'm going to divide by the coefficient, that number out front. So I'm going to divide by 2. What I do on one side, I do to the other. All right, well, I know 8 divided by 2 is 4. There is no reason to flip our sign. We have a 2 that cancels the 2 on bottom, so x falls down. Okay, so this is our answer. The only thing is it's written improperly, and the reason it's improper is because I want the x on the other side. So I need to flip-flop what's on each side. So I want x on this side, I want 4 on this side. But if I'm going to flip-flop what's on either side, I also have to flip-flop my sign. All right, so now let's draw what this inequality looks like. Okay, well, I see the or equals. That's a solid line, so I'm going to go put a solid circle at 4. Next, that symbol says greater than. Also remember, greater than looks like it's an arrow pointing to the right. And in this case, 4 would be a solution because it says or equal to 4. So 4 would be a solution. And any number greater than 4 as well. So 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 and so on. Okay, number 5. I'm going to draw my line. And I see parentheses, which means I'm going to distribute, aka multiply. So I'm going to take this negative 6 and I'm going to multiply it by x. Negative 6 times x is negative 6x. Now I'm going to take that negative 6 and multiply it by 1. Negative 6 times 1 is a negative 6. So I write minus 6. We have done nothing to mess with our sign. And we're going to distribute on the right side. So 2 times x is 2x. And then I'm going to take that 2 and multiply by 5. 2 times 5 is a positive 10, so I write plus 10. All right, so parentheses are done. Now we need to check to see, can we combine like terms? So I look on the left-hand side. I see variable, no variable. So those are not alike. I can't combine. Check the right. I see a variable, no variable, which means they are not alike, so I can't combine. All right, so I can't combine. So we move on to the next one, which is make sure we have all variables on one side, which we do not. We have negative 6x's here, and we have 2x's over here. Okay, remember, it does not matter which one you choose to get rid of. I'm going to choose to get rid of these guys because the opposite of a negative is a positive, and I like to add. So I'm going to add 6x. What I do on one side, I remember to do to the other, and I keep it all lined up. X's under x's. My negative 6x and my positive 6x cancel, so that negative 6 will drop down. We've done nothing to mess with the sign. We had 2x's and we added 6x's. Well, 2 plus 6 is 8, so now we have 8x's, and that plus 10 will drop. So if I want x by itself, I know I have to get rid of the 8 and the plus 10. Well, I know I have to get rid of this plus 10 first, so I'm going to take away 10. What I do on one side, I remember to do to the other. Well, on the left side, this says negative 6 minus 10. Negative 6 minus 10 is a negative 16. We still have not done anything to flip our sign. A plus 10 and a minus 10 cancel, so that 8x falls down. Almost there. So the only thing we have to get rid of so x can be alone is this 8. Well, they're touching, so remember that means 8 times x. The opposite of times is divide. We divide by that coefficient, that number out front, which is 8, and we remember to do it to both sides. Negative 16 divided by 8 gives me a negative 2. I do not flip the signs because I divided by a positive 8. Okay, I don't care if the top guy is negative. It's what you divide by. Well, we divided by 8, and that is not negative, so that's no reason to flip. On the other side, we have an 8 on top, which cancels that 8 on bottom, so the x drops down. Okay, so this is correct. The only thing is it's written improperly. So remember, I want the x on the other side, so we need to flip-flop. So I want an x on this side, I want the negative 2 on this side. And remember, if you're going to flip-flop what's on either side of the inequality, you also have to flip-flop your sign. So that is our answer. And we're going to put it on the number line. So decide open or solid circle. So I look under my inequality. It does not have the or equal, so no solid line, no solid circle. So we're going to put an open circle at negative 2. And then we have to decide which way to shade. Well, this is a greater than symbol. Notice the greater than symbol also looks like an arrow to the right. Okay, let's talk about will negative 2 be a solution in this case? We know it will not because the or equals is missing. So negative 2 would not be a solution. That's why we use the open circle. But any number that's greater than negative 2 will be. So 0 or 2 or 4. All right. Let's try a word problem. Okay, so we know the cost of a one-topping pizza is $4. That's cool. Each additional topping costs $1.25 and the delivery fee is $2.25. If you want to spend no more than $12.50, how many additional toppings can you get on your pizza? Okay, so we're going to write an inequality and then we're going to solve. Okay, so we're comparing two things. Okay, we're going to compare what the cost of the pizza is. So we're going to be comparing the cost of the pizza with how much money we have. Okay, so let's talk about how much this pizza is going to cost. So it tells me, I know it's going to cost at least $4, right? So the cost of pizza is at least $4, plus, what if we want more than one topping? So each additional topping will cost $1.25. So plus $1.25, but it says $1.25 for each topping. So I'm going to have to put 1.25, let's call it X. And X will stand for toppings. So I know the pizza is going to cost $4 plus $1.25 times however many toppings we decide to get. Plus, there is also a delivery fee of $2.25. Okay, so I know this is how much the pizza will cost. $4 plus $1.25 times however many extra toppings plus the delivery fee. Okay, and we need to compare that to how much money we have. Well, it says we want to spend no more than $12.50, so I know we have $12.50. Okay, if we want to spend no more than $12.50, do I want the cost of the pizza to be greater than $12.50 or less than? Well, if I want to spend no more, that means I want the pizza to be less than what we have. The cost can't be more than what we have, or else we can't afford it, right? So the cost has to be less than what we have. Okay, let's talk about, could it equal exactly $12.50? Yeah, because I don't want to spend any more than $12.50. $12.50 is not more than $12.50, so I can spend $12.50 or less, right? So the cost of the pizza can either equal $12.50 or it needs to be less than $12.50. All right, so now let's solve this guy. So I'm going to draw my line. There are no parentheses, so that's cool. But let's see if we can combine like terms. So I look on the left side. I see, see x is here. There are no other x's, so let's look for our regular numbers here and here. Okay, so we know our variables always come first. So I see 1.25 x's. There are no other x's to add to it, so it drops down. And let's combine our regular numbers. I see a 4 and a 2.25, so I add those together. 4 plus 2.25 is a positive 6.25. Okay, we've done nothing to change our sign. And on the right-hand side, that 12.50 will drop. That's a decimal. Okay, so we're trying to get x by itself, which means I need to get rid of this 1.25, and I have to get rid of the 6.25. So I'm going to get rid of the plus 6.25 first by doing the opposite. I'm going to subtract 6.25 from both sides. This plus 6.25 and minus 6.25 cancels, so that 1.25x drops down. We've done nothing to flip our sign. And on the right side, 12.50 minus 6.25 comes out to be 6.25. We're almost there. Last thing I have to get rid of, so x can be alone, is this 1.25, and they are touching, so we remember that means multiply. The opposite of multiply is divide. And I'm going to divide by that coefficient, which is 1.25. What I do on one side, I remember to do the other. My 1.25 on top cancels my 1.25 on bottom, and the x drops down. We still have not done anything to flip our sign. On the right-hand side, 6.25 divided by 1.25 comes out to be a clean 5. Okay, so this is our answer, but let's talk about it. What does that actually even mean in the context of this story? Well, this is a real-life problem, so what does that x less than or equal to 5 actually mean? Okay, well, the question said, how many additional toppings can we get on our pizza? Okay, well, we know x stands, because up here we put 1.25, it's $1.25 for each additional topping. So I know that this is saying the number of toppings we get have to be less than or equal to 5 toppings. So let's write that out in words, what we actually discovered, okay? So what that means is we must get 5 or less toppings. So that's what our answer actually meant. We know x stands for how many additional toppings. I forgot the word additional. 5 or less additional. Okay, my bad. All right, cool. See you guys tomorrow.